welcome back, Daryl.
It's always good to be here, my friend. Good to see you.
So listen, what occurs to me when I think back to our last session where we were talking about looking at alternatives, it really is one of the early steps of the planning process, right? And you used the roadmap analogy, where if you're you're in city A and you want to get to city B, part of the planning process is building a roadmap, but there's other components to it, right? And particularly now, we've done something very similar over the course of this series where we said to people, all right, start by thinking about your thinking. Now create a vision. And the vision really is that city B that we want to, we're in city A now. We want to be in city B.
Absolutely.
The before snapshot, the after snapshot, however you want to describe it. But we've got these two states. We've got a desired future state, which should be magnetic, should be a powerful draw to move us forward. We've got the current state, which is where we are, but the only way you're going to get to that future state is by building a plan that's got milestones and all kinds of other things built in. So, all of the work that you've done with individuals and with organizations, Daryl, how do you normally approach the planning piece of this with them? Because it's critical, it seems to me.
Is extremely critical. And, I'm sort of a storyteller. So let me give you a 1 minute story. Hope I'm not repeating this story, but the story about one of my early stage mentors, his name is Earl Stafford. He built a company up that was just phenomenal. He sold it to Lockheed Martin for like $500 million. So he's on the beach somewhere relaxing right now.
A nice beach.
Yeah, a very nice beach. But I remember my first mentoring session with him. He was very clear with me about something, because I was impressed. I actually met him through reading an article on him in USA Today. I reached out to him. I was determined to meet this guy, and I finally met him. And then he had me come down to his office. But then he said something in the beginning of our initial mentoring process that really shaped a lot of what I do today. He said, Daryl, people see what I'm doing today. They see what I've accomplished, and you've seen what I accomplished, and that's what attracted you. He said, but let me tell you something, how I succeeded. He said 95% of the population out here, and that's a big number. So he just, but he's throwing out there, fall in love with the dream. They fall in love with the dream. They want this thing to happen. They're trying to accomplish this outcome, and they're loving it so much that they can almost taste it. He said, but let me tell you something, young man, and don't you ever forget this. He said, don't fall in love with the dream, fall in love with the process. He said, it's the process that gets you to the dream.
Okay.
And he said, that's what I fell in love with. So what am I saying? He had to have a strategy. He had to have a plan. And one thing he said to me with that process piece was that it can be a little messy. That's not the pretty stuff. So with planning, we have to have a plan because we can't just say we want to reinvent. That sounds good and it feels good.
Right.
What do we have to do to reinvent? What's the goal that we want? The first thing that's logically in the planning process, what are the strategic steps? Like we know what the outcome is. We want to reinvent ourselves. We want to, go down new pathways. We want new career possibilities. So we look at Optimize and we look at other tools that can help us with that. But once we start to kind of get a grip of that, then what do we do? So what are some of the steps? One step we're going to be talking about a little later is the networking, and things like that. But what are the strategic steps that's going to help me get to this plan? Okay. To get to this outcome. Here's another one that's important. What are the obstacles? And in the plans, you got to look at that could prohibit me from getting there. Like, what have I done? Do I procrastinate? Do I have a tendency not to do things in a timely manner?
Right.
When we're planning, we got to look at all of this, and we have to answer questions in order to get to this outcome that we want. Because if not, it'll be very difficult.
So have you got a process that you share with folks around building that plan? Because it seems to me, you're right. I mean, you got to think about what the plan is. You got to think about what the obstacles are. But, particularly when you're thinking of a vision that is a big picture, multiple years in advance, there's going to be plans within the plan, right? So part of it might be educational upgrading, and there's going to be some steps related to that. Part of it might be the networking that you mentioned, and we'll come back to at a future session, and learning to get really good at growing my circle. Parts of it are going to be identifying,
Mhm.
organizations that are going to be able to offer me the kind of career path they're going to take me where I want to be. So there's
Absolutely.
all sorts of strands here that I need to be thinking about. And I think for
Yeah,
some people that can be
that could be
intimidating. How do I start?
that could be daunting. And let me say this. I don't, because of time, we can't give everything, but what I can tell you is just certain elements that I always have people think about.
Okay.
And keep in mind when we're doing this in workshops. So if I'm coaching people, this could be an ongoing process. So, the first thing again is what's the vision? What's the goal? We'd already talked about that. And you want that to be clear because you got to know, find a particular career. I've identified a new pathway, whatever it may be. That's the driving force. Then you got to put the goal piece in there. What's the date, start date? What's the end date? When do I want to accomplish this? When is this plan when am I going to see sort of an execution or full execution of this plan? So you just don't want to say I have a plan and then there's no timelines in it. You want to put timelines in there so that you can kind of hold yourself accountable to accomplishing certain things. There may be multiple timelines in there, where you're looking at specific outcomes that you're trying to accomplish. But the big pieces I always talk about, obviously the strategic steps, but this one I mentioned it briefly. What are the obstacles to this plan succeeding? Like what can trip this up? And people don't like to talk about that too much, but we got to look at that because all of us have things that we do that can limit our ability to achieve an outcome. Like I just mentioned a few in jest, procrastination or terrible time management,
That's not in jest. I mean, so this is a moment of truth thing, I think, for a lot of us, Daryl, because when I think back to when I was doing an awful lot of coaching, and we get to the what are the barriers part of the conversation.
Yeah,
people were always pointing outside of them, right? It's my boss or it's my coworkers or I won't have the money or blah 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 blah, and that's okay. Some of those might be valid, and sure, you might need to talk about contingency planning so that you can overcome those barriers.
Yeah,
but for the most part, the only really important barriers are the ones that are really uncomfortable to talk about honestly because they're inside.
Yeah. And as a person who's regularly coaching now, still in the mix with it, that's the stumbling block for most people. They just we're so intent on projecting an image to the world. You know what I mean? And also we're bent on the way we feel about ourselves. We're uncomfortable with those things that we're uncomfortable with. And it's important to at some point we got to come clean, like you're saying. We got to come clean and say, okay, I struggle with this, and maybe I need some help. So there could be coaching within the coaching. I have a problem with procrastination. Maybe I need to find somebody that can help me with accountability. You know what I mean? I'm terrible with time management. Maybe I need somebody that can coach me on managing my time. So when you're planning, there's all kinds of elements in there where I may need additional assistance.
Right.
And that's okay because you're no different than an athlete in training. Athletes are getting coached by strength coaches. They're getting trained by position coaches. They're being trained by nutritional coaches. Why? Because they have this vision of what they're trying to accomplish. And so they know they need people to help them accomplish it. So that obstacle part is important. But then the next one other little additional piece I want to add, who can help me? In that plan, you need to have people that can assist you in the achievement of what it is you're looking to achieve. Is it, an organization or a person within an organization? Is it a person with a particular set of skills? Is it a family member? Is it a friend?
Not necessarily people I have to pay.
Yeah, people don't have to pay.
Right.
It don't always have to be people that you're paying.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can have a coach, but then you can have a friend. I want Jim to be my accountability partner. Jim and I have been kind of encouraging each other for years. I'm just throwing the name out, it could be Fred or whatever, or Mary, depending on the person. But you want to recognize the fact that some people they're wired to be so diligent that they're just going to do it because that's the way they're wired. Not all of us are there. And that could be a shortcoming, but we have to realize that is a shortcoming.
So it seems to me whoever that person is or whoever that handful of people are, they've got to be people who are willing to be uncomfortable, or let me rephrase that, willing to be comfortable telling us the truth about how we're showing up.
You know, I like to tell people all the time, Jan, I don't like to tell them this, but the reality of it is we lie to each other too much.
It's true. Lie to ourselves too much.
We lie to ourselves. We reason why we want to keep the relationship, you know, in a certain place.
Mhm.
And then, but what I tell people all the time, your true friends in society or whoever are the ones who you can be honest with each other and still be good friends, because you know that the person cares about you enough to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And the ones who just placate you all the time, we get used to being that placation, and next thing you know, we don't break through and pursue things because we just want the pat on the back. We got some friends that's going to shove us in the back,
Well,
and we need people like that as well.
and the truth is, you know, telling the truth requires courage. And I've been in many organizations, and you know, there was a very large organization I did consulting work in for a bunch of years.
Mhm.
They used to refer to it as Midwest polite,
Yeah.
you know, and people were never told the truth about their performance and where they had messed up,
Mhm.
or where they were doing really well. I mean, it was people were skirting the tough conversation day in and day out, and it was causing huge issues in the organization.
I can imagine that, and that's not unusual. You know, when you look at a cultural issues within organizations, it usually stems from that. People, there's no sense of identity. There's no sense of, you know, values and things like that. If honesty is the value, then we're going to be honest with each other. You know, so yeah. But all of that plays a role in planning. You need people. You need to recognize the obstacles. You need to have a strategic steps. You need to have goals. You need to have the dates and deadlines, and you have to find out who are those people that can help me. And resources, not just people, but it could be, like you said, additional education. I'm taking a training program, or I'm going to get certified in something, or, you know, so all of that should be in the plan. I would say you don't need an extensive plan. It could be a page or two, but it's something that you can follow.
Well, the fact that you're saying a page or two suggests that it has to be in writing.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, I would like seeing it. You know, I'm saying it right. It could be on your. If you're a tech person, you can put it in your phone and carry it with you that way. But you do want to write it. You do want to take the discipline.
It's not in here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's not in your head. You know, you want to have the discipline of taking the time. I live by a plan and a set of goals, and that drives me every day. I have to be flexible because that can adjust in any given moment. But I to me, I can't accomplish my goals unless I'm strategic with it. I just can't.
And I worked with a manager once who said, you know, it doesn't matter if the goal's in your head or not. If it's in your head, it's not real.
It's not real.
The act of putting it in writing, whether it's electronically or on a piece of paper, is the first and most important step to actually making it come to pass.
Absolutely.
And there's an act of creation in actually writing it down, which gets
it kicks everything into gear too. I mean, I even have fitness goals. I work out every day, but I have a little planner here. Everything is written out. It's my planner. I wake up, there's certain times in my day. And it's not that I'm the best time manager, but I know what I want. I mean, I'd look at my diet, what I want to eat, exercise, because if I don't put it in writing, I'm like you said, it's here. And then I'm not thinking about it. But if you want to, back to the message at the hand here, if you want to reinvent, if you want to go a new pathway, you got to have a plan, and you got to have the discipline to write that plan down. If not, you'll revisit this year after year after year, and then you look up like, what happened?
Like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, like
so good session on planning. So you got to have a plan. It's got to be in writing. It doesn't have to be pages and pages. It could be 1 or 2 pages.
Absolutely.
But it has to be in writing. It has to be in front of you somehow.
Yeah. Do you know? Yeah, I'll say this. You know what venture capitalists today say? If you come into me with a 60-day plan, I'm gonna rip it up.
It's true.
They don't want all that anymore.
They want a single page.
There you go.
Because that forces clarity too, right? And that clarity is valuable.
It is valuable.
Otherwise, it gets lost in all sorts of clutter.
Yeah.
Obstacles you mentioned, and you got to consider the internal ones as well as the external ones, but really focus on the internal ones and surrounding yourself with people who are willing to tell you the truth.
Yeah, and that's a formula for success.
Okay.
It really is, because you have accountability, you have discipline, you have all that stuff working together. You know, it's just a formula for success. Is it immediate success? No. If it's overnight, not really. You still have to work at it. But it's proven, Jan. It works.
Okay. So I think we're going to have a pretty meaty workbook at the end of this session.
Yes,
Darryl, thank you.
Thank you.
As always, it's a pleasure.
Yeah. Same to you, man. Thank you.
Talk to you next time.